There are public figures who are remembered for speeches and others who are remembered for ceremonies. But Catherine, Princess of Wales, has slowly built a different kind of reputation, one rooted not in grandeur, but in moments that feel unexpectedly ordinary. Over time, she has been quietly embraced by many as the children's princess, a nickname that reflects less her title and more the way she appears in unscripted interactions with families and young children. It is not the polished speeches or formal portraits that define this perception. It is the pauses between them, the spontaneous conversations with parents, the gentle attention given to children mid-chaos, the small gestures that never seem rehearsed, yet consistently stand out. In a world where public appearances are often carefully staged, these unscripted fragments carry unusual weight. They feel real. And in modern public life, feeling real is often more powerful than perfection. Recently, a new video released by Kensington Palace once again placed this contrast on display. Catherine appeared during an engagement focused on early childhood development, a subject that has gradually become the central pillar of her public work. Dressed in a refined yet understated tailored outfit, she presented the familiar balance she is often associated with, formal enough for royal duty, but soft enough to feel approachable. But it wasn't the clothing that drew attention. It was the small personal details she wore. A delicate necklace featuring initials representing her children, a simple piece of jewelry that carried emotional meaning far beyond its appearance. For many viewers, it wasn't a fashion statement. It was a reminder that behind structured roles and public expectations, there is still a parent moving through the same emotional world as everyone else, just in a very different setting. And that contrast is what continues to define her public image. Much of Catherine's recent work has centered around early childhood development, an area that blends science, social awareness, and personal experience into a single, long-term focus. At public engagements, she is often seen speaking with researchers, educators, and parents about the realities of raising children in a rapidly changing world. But what stands out is not just the topic itself, it is the tone. Rather than approaching it as an abstract policy discussion, she often frames it through lived experience, acknowledging the emotional weight that comes with parenting, especially in modern environments shaped by constant information, pressure, and comparison. This approach has helped shape her reputation as unusually relatable within the context of royal life, not because her circumstances are ordinary, but because her responses often feel grounded in something universally understood. At one recent visit to a community support center in Windsor, she spent time with volunteers working with families in need. The environment was informal, filled with donated items, children's clothing, and everyday essentials being sorted and organized. Instead of maintaining distance, she participated directly, engaging with the space in a way that blurred the line between observer and participant. During casual conversation, a small anecdote about her own children surfaced naturally, revealing how quickly everyday parenting moments pass and become memories before parents even realize it. It was not delivered as a public statement. It was simply part of the conversation. And that is often how her most talked about moments occur, not through planned messaging, but through ordinary exchanges that happen to be recorded. Observers often note that she does not attempt to dominate conversations or shift attention toward herself. Instead, she listens, responds, and reacts in ways that mirror the emotional rhythm of the people she is speaking with. That quality, listening as much as speaking, has become central to how she is perceived in public life. Because in environments where authority is expected, empathy stands out. And in environments where distance is normal, presence becomes noticeable. In the evolving story of Catherine, Princess of Wales, one theme has gradually moved from background interest to central focus: early childhood. What began as a charitable interest has now developed into a long-term public mission, one that blends research, parenting insight, and institutional influence into a single, carefully structured initiative. At public engagements, she is often seen visiting research centers, speaking with child development experts, and meeting parents who share their experiences navigating modern family life. The conversations are rarely dramatic, but they are deeply human. Parents talk about pressure, about exhaustion, about the constant balancing act between work, expectations, and emotional presence. And Catherine, instead of responding in abstract terms, often engages through shared understanding rather than distance. That approach has quietly reshaped how her work is perceived. It is no longer viewed as just another royal initiative. It is seen as a consistent personal focus. Even small details, like gestures of comfort toward children during visits, become part of a larger public narrative about empathy and connection. In one widely shared moment, a child in a research environment approached her unexpectedly, resulting in a brief, natural interaction that quickly circulated online. Not because it was staged, but because it wasn't. In a media landscape filled with controlled messaging, unpredictability often becomes the most memorable element, and Catherine's public role increasingly exists in that space between structure and spontaneity, a space where formal responsibility meets everyday human interaction. In modern public life, there is no such thing as a small moment anymore. A brief interaction, a smile, a conversation overheard at a public engagement, each one has the potential to become global content within minutes. Catherine's public appearances frequently demonstrate this phenomenon. A casual comment about parenting becomes widely shared online. A gentle interaction with a child becomes a trending clip. A simple acknowledgement of everyday family life becomes interpreted as insight into her private world. The transformation is almost automatic. Ordinary moments pass through a digital filter and emerge as cultural symbols. And because Catherine is both a public figure and a mother, her interactions with children often receive heightened attention. Observers consistently describe her demeanor as calm, attentive, and naturally comfortable in environments involving young families. Whether at charity visits, school-related events, or community engagements, she appears to engage without forcing formality into every exchange. That ease is part of what shapes her public reputation, but it also creates a unique dynamic. The more natural a moment appears, the more attention it receives. This creates a feedback loop. Ordinary becomes extraordinary simply through visibility. And visibility in modern culture is everything. Even the most routine exchange, helping a child feel at ease, listening to a parent's concerns, or participating in a conversation about early development, can become a defining image when shared widely enough. It is not the scale of the moment that matters. It is the audience watching it unfold. Public perception is rarely built from a single event. It is constructed slowly, through repetition. For Catherine, that repetition has come in the form of consistent engagement with children, families, and early years initiatives over time. Each appearance reinforces a specific image, composed, attentive, and focused on emotional development as much as public duty. But behind that image lies the complexity of balancing multiple roles simultaneously. Royal life demands structure, precision, and formality. Parenting demands flexibility, emotional availability, and unpredictability. Early childhood advocacy sits somewhere between the two, requiring both empathy and institutional focus. Catherine's public role increasingly reflects that intersection. She is not simply attending events. She is building continuity across them. Still, the public often interprets these appearances through simplified narratives. Warmth becomes a defining trait. Kindness becomes a headline. Familiarity becomes a brand identity. But real life is more layered than any single description. Behind every public moment is preparation, scheduling, coordination, and the invisible framework that allows these interactions to appear effortless. What the public sees is connection. What supports it is structure. And the balance between those two is what defines modern public roles more than ever before. As Catherine's work in early childhood development continues to expand, so too does its scale. What began as national-level engagement has gradually evolved into international attention, with upcoming visits and collaborations aimed at broadening the reach of her initiatives. This transition marks a subtle shift in perception. She is no longer viewed only through the lens of traditional royal duties. Instead, she is increasingly associated with a long-term thematic role focused on childhood development, family well-being, and early years research. It is a direction that blends personal identity with institutional responsibility in a way that feels increasingly central to her public presence. And yet, despite the growing scope of her work, the most memorable aspects remain the smallest ones. A conversation with a parent, a moment of encouragement to a child, a quiet exchange that lasts only seconds but resonates far longer online. These fragments continue to shape how she is seen, not as a distant figure, but as someone whose presence feels unexpectedly grounded within extraordinary circumstances. In a world that constantly amplifies spectacle, it is often the simplest human moments that leave the strongest impression. And for Catherine, Princess of Wales, those moments have become the defining thread of her public identity, not because they are engineered, but because they feel, in a very modern way, real.